Now, if you know anything about Chinese politics, then you've probably heard about Liu Xiaobo. Now, this guy now has won a Nobel Prize, and what he's doing is his whole thing is that he's a human rights activist. He's pro-human rights, pro-democracy, and from that stance, frequently attacks China. That's basically his thing. From his home or from his home base in Hong Kong, he criticizes the mainland. Now, it's not like China is, without reasons to be criticized, of course. But I think there's some interesting context to his accusations that need to be looked at. Well, during the 2004 presidential campaign, Liu praised George W. Bush for his attack on Iraq and criticized John Kerry for not sufficiently supporting U.S. war. He said, "The outstanding achievement made by Bush in anti-terrorism absolutely cannot be erased by Kerry's slandering. However, much risk must be endured in striking down Saddam Hussein. Know that no action would lead to a greater risk. This has been proven by the Second World War and September 11th. No matter what, the war against Saddam Hussein is just. The decision by President Bush is right." Now, wasn't he being offered the Nobel Peace Prize? It's amazing how all these people who support war, who actually engage in war, create them, turn around and somehow get Nobel Peace Prizes. That's always been a bit of a strange thing, a part of history. Now, obviously, you can't very well claim you're for human rights, then support the war on Iraq, which is one of the biggest human rights crimes in history, which has cost the lives of 1.5 million Iraqi people, including women and children. Now, his disgraceful conduct while presenting himself as a champion of human rights does not end there. He actually praises Israel's stance in the Middle East conflict. He places the blame for the Israeli-Palestine, the conflict between Israel and Palestine, right on Palestinians who he calls often the provocateurs. Yes, that's right. The Palestinians who are being slaughtered, the one-sided slaughter, they're having a genocide carried out against them. It's their fault that there's hostilities between Israel and Palestine. Never mind the people committing genocide. The victims of genocide are the ones responsible for it happening. And these little bits of information certainly put a really interesting twist on the fact that his claim to be a human rights activist. He doesn't really seem like much of a human rights person if he's going to support the Iraq War and Israeli genocide. Now, he wrote his thing, Charter 08. He called for a Western-style democracy in China and the privatization of all enterprises and farmland. Look at that. He's pro-West and he's pro-privatize everything. The opposite to what a lot of Chinese development has been about due to state-owned enterprises, state investment in particular industries. He wants to do the opposite of that because that's human rights, right? Because the freer the market, the freer the people kind of nonsense. And that seems to be what he's pushing right now. So I guess we can kind of see why he's being touted as a human rights champion in China. He's pretty much just a tool of Western capital. And I think that's pretty obvious at this point. Now, finally, if all of that wasn't enough to show you what kind of a fraud this guy actually is, he receives financial support from the U.S. government's National Endowment for Democracy, an organization that frequently interjects itself into many of the democratic issues of countries around the world. In other words, they frequently try to manipulate them in order for pro-U.S. interests. I mean, the National Endowment for Democracy is known all across the world as being basically a tool of U.S. foreign policy, and this guy takes money from it. So I don't really know at what point you can really stand here and say this guy really is a human rights champion. It really seems more like he's just a tool of U.S. foreign policy. So all of his acclaim for being, for human rights, for peace, and to stand for democracy, a lot of this seems pretty well a load of garbage, given that it's very clear that he is nothing more than a tool of U.S. foreign policy. Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.